Hello everybody, welcome to episode 192 of Shelf Viewers. Today we'll be going over chapter 12 of Haunted Peak entitled Sanctuary. So we start this chapter off as we see as Ebihara and Miko are making a lot of progress on building the cabin. We see his installations being put in and all that, or insulation, not installation. And we see this continues. Then we kind of see as they get into some idle chatter. We see as Ebihara mentioned about how Kipe, Miko's grandfather, had pulled up to the mountain after, Miko had left the other day, and told Ebihara that he probably needs to get off the mountain because it's boar mating season and he doesn't want to get attacked. Ebihara was like, yeah, I sleep in my car, even though he just sleeps underneath the foundation of the cabin, really. And we then see as they get into the conversation, and Miko reveals that Ebihara and his grandfather, not Ebihara, but Kipe and his grandfather, were good friends when they were children, and they grew up as good friends and all of that. And Ebihara asks if they ever went hunting together. And we see how, Miko explains how his grandfather was not big on hunting. He went hunting one time with Kipe and friends because there wasn't really anything else to do in the town. And when he went to do this, he became very traumatized by what happened. And the only way that his grandfather kept from being kind of like ostracized and seen as a wimp was Kipe defended him. Kipe was like, you know what? If you can't kill something, if you don't want to kill something for actual meat and you're just doing it for sport, that's far more respectable than just killing for sport. We see then as Ebihara asks Miko, yo, what would you think about hunting? And Miko was like, well, I would want to carry the gun in my hand and actually kill the animal just to feel like I'm much man. But he was like, I don't think that would make me seem respectable, because if I'm just killing for the sport of it and I don't actually like the game meat, then that's not respectable at all. And we see as Ebihara comments about the maturity for Miko of his age in this point, because he's like, you know what, most kids at your age wouldn't have like thought about that nor talked to someone about this. And Miko ends up revealing, yo, you're the only person I've talked with stuff about this. So we then see as it kind of moves along, and ultimately we see as Miko's heading down the mountain, and we see as he runs into Mayu, who is the owner of the inn near his house and all that, and near the mountain, which Ebihara say that briefly. And we see as they get to talking, and ultimately Mayu ends up confronting him about going up on the mountain, and she's like, you didn't meet up with that man, did you? And Miko's like, yeah, I met up with him, he's super chill, and he's kind and all of that, and I'm helping him build his cabin. And Mayu kind of freaks out a little bit about this, because she's like, you're a kid, you shouldn't be up there with that grown man, I'm going to report this or something. And Miko's kind of like, oh, mind your own business, bro, because nothing wrong is happening here, I'm just helping this dude build his house and all of that. And he has made a friend with Ebihara. So we then see as Mayu goes about on some errands, collecting stuff for the inn. Obviously, she runs into some actual guests at the inn, kind of talks to them briefly. And then she's sitting in her car, and it appears that she's relaxing. And we then see as someone comes up and knocks on her window. This is Kazuma, the dude who is like being flirtatious with the minor Momiji. But yeah, it's also Roka's like ex brother-in-law, I think. And we see as they get to talking briefly, and he's like, not slacking on the job, are you? Hitting him with the working hard or hardly working. And we then see this, and Mayu ends up mentioning some news that she heard, that Kazuma had remarried, and he's like, yeah, she's a 21-year-old, 5 months pregnant. And that's very odd considering how old he is, but yeah, we see as they get to talking, and ultimately they speak for a little bit, and we see then as he ends up mentioning about how he knows about Mayu's secret. Well, not really necessarily a secret, but her massive failure that she had in Tokyo with her endeavors there, where she ultimately failed, and had to come back here to their hometown. And he's like, why don't we go get some drinks and discuss it over some good old liquor afterwards? And that's where the chapter ends. Now, buddy, you've been married multiple times, and now you are going to cheat. Well, not necessarily cheat. Yes, this is cheating. Going out with someone else who isn't your wife, especially your wife who's 5 months pregnant. You're just going to go out there and like, oh yeah, I'm going to go with this other woman now. Bro is a scoundrel. But yeah, that's kind of the characterization you get from Kazuma from his 2 appearances so far, or 2 or 3. I think he was only in chapter 3 for 1 chapter. But yeah. So Kazuma, being a dirtbag as per usual, kind of blackmailing Mayu into getting him some drinks, because he mentions about how she hadn't told her father, which is obviously very important, and he can hold this over her to go get some drinks with her. But yeah, so I'm really curious to see where we're actually going to be going with the Miko and Ebihara kind of arc, because they seem to be getting chill. Like, Ebihara seems to be becoming more of like almost a father figure, or like masculine guardian to Miko. I mean, not necessarily a guardian, but like I don't know, kind of like a cool uncle in a way. Like, I guess that's kind of the best way to describe it. And we now have the possible threat of Mayu calling in someone and being like, yo, this kid is getting groomed or something. by this dude up here on the mountain, because she did mention about how she was how Ebihara was likely manipulating Miko. Miko's like, no, he's not doing anything like that. But we now have the possibility of their, I guess, companionship ending because Mayu reports Ebihara or something like that, which would be, well, we don't know if it's going to be bad or not because Ebihara could be grooming Miko or something like that, but I don't think he is. Ebihara seems like a really good guy, at least from what we've heard from the horse's mouth himself. But yeah, so I'm really ready to see how that plays out because I don't really have an idea about where their story is going to go from here because it doesn't seem that there's a clear path for any development. Now we are focusing more on side characters like Mayu, and I believe Mayu is going to become a far more significant character within the story because we've had the previous chapter kind of focused on her on the end, and now we have another chapter predominantly focusing on her. So I'm ready to see how this plays out and what we see with Mayu because I believe Mayu can have some connection. Like now that Mayu's going out to have drinks with Kazuma likely in the next chapter, maybe she's going to learn something a little bit more about Ebihara because Kazuma does work in the forestry area and has at least some knowledge on Ebihara because of the filing and all that. So maybe she's going to gain some knowledge here or learn something that we as readers do not know yet. So I'm really ready to see how that plays out, and I'm just excited to read more Haunted Peak whenever it comes out, because we are getting a chapter next week, and unlike the 2-week break that we had recently. But yeah, that's all there really was for chapter 12 of Haunted Peak entitled Sanctuary, and that's all I really have for episode 192 of Shelf Review. So, thank you very much for watching.